As a fair disclaimer, this was quite a few years ago, so I have matured greatly as a player and now DM. With that out of the way, let me tell you the story of my, and my brother's least, favorite D&D character, Aronrakir Grimwald Dread. Born from a boring car ride and a random name generator, Aronrakir bounced around in my head until I was introduced into one of my first D&D games. I'd read a lot of the books and went to a program for D&D, but hadn't played a lot of games since I didn't know anyone that played in my town, unfortunately. However, due to a wonderful set of coincidences, I finally had a game nearby my house with a few friends, two of which I am still very good friends with to this day. He incarnated as a changeling bard, born to be the most charismatic mother flipper ever born on Faerun. I made him an eloquence bard, and, even though I picked horrendously on spells, he was still in my naive eyes a masterpiece of a character, who had no backstory, and was an idiot. Seriously, he had -1 in both intelligence and wisdom. I picked horribly on those. Thankfully, the DM didn't really have a lot of monsters with saving throws. Anyways, I had dropped in on the middle of a combat with the party fighting a tribe of lizard folk, since we were playing Tales from the Yawning Portal and they were in the Glitterhaim. I won't go into too much D&D lingo, or I'll try not to. Since I was a changeling, my character shapeshifted into an orc before the party met, because I had thought that would be a smart plan, since I read the module a few months back and learned that there are orcs previous to the lizard folk. I remember that the lizard folk king was trying to cast invisibility and failing miserably, since the DM had a magic roll system that was dropped halfway throughout the campaign because it was really not greatly designed. I heard the king scream because the DM screamed in real life. Well, not really screamed, more like face-palmed, due to the horrendous amount of nat ones that king was rolling. And so the king screamed from the DM's internal screaming of the complete and utter failures. But back to the point. I turned invisible myself, and then dropped it, shapeshifted into the king. So I turned invisible, shapeshifted into the king, and then dropped my invisibility, and then declared myself the actual king. And the lizard folk just turned and ripped their king to pieces. Because I rolled so close to failing, but I got it. Later in the game, you will see what happens when I don't get it. I did deal some damage to some of the lizard folk, because I claimed that the imposter king, blinded me, and I was firing off spells at random, which, thankfully, I think the lizard folk king did know, so I wasn't really, overstepping my rolls. Over the next 2 sessions, the party and I reached throughout the dungeon, defeating or adding the remaining inhabitants to my newly growing kingdom. Basically, it was just 4 people, plus or minus a few allies throughout the dungeon. I remember making a deal with some Duergar and maybe some other stuff, but there wasn't really a lot of people. Eventually, the party defeated the final boss of that dungeon, a young black dragon named Nightscale. They then got a pet dragon of their own from a one-shot I ran, since the DM was busy that week. In hindsight, I should probably introduce the other characters. There was Thorin Fireforge, a dwarven, who could have guessed, druid. Who could have guessed was on the dwarf, by the way. Kethon, whose last name was probably some kind of code. And Elven Paladin, who was a clone, and I'll play the same character each time the old one died, but with a different code. The character didn't really keep this, because he turned into a dragonborn after shenanigans linked to the baby dragon. And there was also a rogue kicked from the game before I was there, a human barbarian named Flint, a human rogue named Leopold, and finally a human or half-elven cleric named Rurik. However, most of the stuff I remember is linked to Aronrakir, and since he was a bit of a spotlight hog, most of the story is going to be about him. So I hope you don't mind a bit of rambling. Due to the party spending a session trying to RP teaching a dragon morals, Aronrakir included, the lizard folk started to suspect I wasn't their king, since I wasn't acting chaotic evil enough. Just to mention, Rounder here was chaotic neutral, then turned chaotic good, neutral good, and lawful good at the end of the campaign. I had him try and disable the situation, but eventually collapsed and the lizard folk demanded an answer, which the party still outnumbered, so it wouldn't be too much of a loss. It would also be an easy fight on our end. Unfortunately, my younger self decided to not do the right thing and listen to the rolls that were on the dice in front of me, and since we were playing digitally, I happened to fudge it. So, yeah, I apologize for that if the people playing were watching. I don't fudge rolls anymore. Yeah. But, fudging rolls is bad if you're a player, if you're a DM, and something's about to kill your party. Maybe fudge a roll, but that's up to you. But in general, don't fudge rolls. That kind of undermines the game. So I fudged a roll because it went away, and I did not want to fail. So I told the DM I got one higher than I actually did. And he, for some reason, he didn't know, so he just said that it worked, even though, no, it wasn't even though, because he didn't know I cheated, so I fudged a roll, he thought it was actual, and I ended up getting the entire group to, even though my character showed that he was a changeling, and he wasn't an actual lizard folk, they still decided to follow him as their king, because he guaranteed lots and lots of cash. And lots of money I did make, because plate armor only costs 7.5 gold to make, and has the price of 1,500 gold. Now, there is also a time thing, but due to some mixed up medieval mixed up medieval mathematics. That's the one, mixed up medieval mathematics. I kind of had them produce enough plate armor for me to buy a wish scroll by level 7-ish. And then the rest of it was just used to make the city's lives better. And and it mainly focused on most of it was for me, and the rest of it was for the city to get stronger and build more foundations and stuff. Sorry for rambling and going off script. I am going to get back on it now. Soon enough, we took a short break for the DM to plan out the next module of our campaign, and he and I discussed the D&D logistics of my soon-to-be city, who joined, who left, what I was like there, etc. I built up trade around the creation of Salem Palamer, which I mentioned previous, so I'll skip over that. Anyway, I ended up with a crap ton of money. So, yeah, capitalism at its finest, and I ended up putting most of that into upgrading myself with manuals of influence and leadership, or whatever the charisma boosting one was. And interestingly, I also boosted strength, since I don't know why, but my strength was higher than my second highest stat, which as a bard isn't really the most orthodox approach, but kind of worked, because at the end I had a plus 10 or a plus 9 charisma and a plus 6 strength. Anyway, I eventually adopted a kobold named Meepo and had some aforementioned shenanigans with the Spouse Crow of Wish, where I created some monsters to help protect the city, including a Hydra that I tried to convince the DM to chop off all the heads of infinite times. The DM said no to that, thankfully. And now at the next campaign, there was, on the next part of the module, the DM vehemently denied my request to send my entire army down into the dungeons to sort of inch by inch claim it for my empire. And so it was that campaign, I think, was one of the most non-city influential, since not a lot of creatures were added to the city, And my brother's character was introduced and left at that point because he got salty that his necromancer army couldn't last, but my city could, which I guess is a very fair statement. Anyway, the city got OP pretty quick, but I tried to mainly keep it in the background of the others. I did have a lot of fun at the temple since we got up to level 7 from level, I believe, 5. And I was able to turn into a giant ape using polymorph to help us escape from the dungeon. Sorry, just getting a bit of water. Alright, now my voice is back. Oh yeah, and I'll go back to the script. Oh yeah, and another thing about that. Wait, nope, sorry, wrong point. Yeah, so another thing about the characters on the thing is that the DM and I had agreed to give them some class levels. At the end of the game, I actually ended up with around 3,000 to level 8 characters, which, however, you shall see, was not enough to stop what the DM had in store for us. Let's see. Yeah. Going back to my brother's necromancer, he's become a very good player and DM, and still calls me out for making some pretty strong characters. All of my characters are kind of strong, I must admit, and plays with me and our friends regularly. As much regularly can be with like D&D and schedules and stuff, because scheduling those things is not always fun, because I literally went the entire summer without one of my groups being able to play, which was, well, they were able to play once, but I really didn't like how I did on that campaign, since I didn't have a lot of, I wasn't in the flow anymore, so I feel kind of bad, because some of the people in that group's first experience was D&D, with just me failing miserably, in my opinion. I probably didn't fail miserably, but I don't think I did my, 100%. Or was that my 100%? Anyway, now comes the part of the adventure I was solely about for a while. White Plume Mountain was the name of this chapter, and what happened was there were 3 magical items, and since I metagamed with the DM to try and get a Sphinx to... Sorry for the voice crack. A Sphinx to join my army. The DM just said that I can get treasure for the next 2 rooms. The treasure in said next 2 rooms were some magic items that I couldn't get. What magic items? Just Whelm Wave and Black Razor, some of the most powerful magic items in the game. They were legendary magic items, which were sentient. I think they might have been an artifact, but I'm pretty sure they were just legendary. Sorry. So I had metagames trying to get Sphinx from my city. The DM was finally over my BS and showed that the creatures were brainwashed in the text of the thing. And yeah, so I was left out of those, but the adventure still progressed pretty well. And I had at that point I had at that point a +7 charisma and a +6 strength from the investments in the magic books. And we wrapped up with that dungeon pretty easily. Defeated the Efreet guards by having an avalanche collapse on them. Probably the DM taking pity on us because we were not defeating that fight. Even though I was reading it a while before that campaign, I knew that they had 4 Efreet guards optionally. The mandatory, nothing's mandatory in D&D, but it was recommended 2 CR11s to fight this party of level 9s. That doesn't make sense. My voice is not great today. At least I think. I'm not sure how it's coming through. Speaking of the next module, I hope you all liked Arson. Because that is definitely not what happened if YouTube's listening. If YouTube is not listening, yes, that is exactly what happened. In that part, that joke was provided by my brother, by the way. In that part of the module, we had infiltrated a hill giant stronghold with quite the few shenanigans involving moldy cheese and convincing giants that they were basically an inception. It's a long story. Eventually, after our hit points were reduced to the single digits, at I believe 11th level due to a small army of dire wolves that I kept telling everyone we needed to befriend, because I did not want animal cruelty to be on my character's war crime list, I came up with the idea that we could just barricade the exits and burn the hill giants to death. This was because the entire stronghold, not a single other piece of it, was made of wood. The foundations might have been made of stone, but it was hill giants. They generally just had wood and stuff, so we blocked the doors, found the giant's winery and poured wine all over the roof, and set it all on fire with fire magic and torches. And the reason why we did this was because it was one of the final sessions we could do before the eventual end of the campaign due to I think a year-long hiatus, which really sucked because I was really getting into that campaign. But it wasn't done yet because I had tried 2 or 3 times to get a good ending on it. These endings, which I would like to preface beforehand, I have apologized to everyone in it multiple times because they were the most horrible, crappy endings ever. Like, seriously, I don't know how I could have played that. They were only focused around Roderick here and his plot lines, and, like, they all ended up with him, like, being this superhero. I'm not gonna lie and say that's not what happened in the main game. Well, it's not. He became more like a god in the main game. But that's a bit of a longer story. Just wait like 2 or 3 more minutes and I'll get to that. Because at level 18, the stuff you can do is pretty wild. Especially when it's an XP game. The reason why was because me, the DM, and a few other players of that game had all decided after a year-long hiatus during like one of the summers where we had a very little amount of work, not work since none of us, I don't think any of us had a job yet, we all decided to play one final game of Dungeons and Dragons to finish all games. The game to finish all games, because we were finally doing the DM's intended ending. 80,000 giants crawling up the walls of my city, which was an actual city now. It had walls, I believe 1,800 cannons, which sounds OP. And it was OP at any other force, but not 80,000 giants. To put those into context, a normal human has 4 hit points and is a CR 0. A soldier has 11 hit points and is a CR 1/8. These giants had like 1 or 200 hit points and were CR 5 to 16. Most of them were CR 5s, but me and the DM had, and to my mistake, I lore accurately decided to have all the giants show up because apparently there are a lot of giants in D&D. So around 80,000 giants from all across the world had teamed up and just started walking to my base as the first target. Again, I would like to apologize for the players what happened before and what happens next, because we tried to do everything since we had 2 months, since we knew they were attacking us. My friend who was a druid, you haven't heard about any of the other players in a while, so I'll tell you what they did. The druid decided to grow a giant forest. The paladin wasn't really there for the first session, so didn't really do anything. My brother made a CR30 adamantium dragon, which was a dragon that I believe should not have worked, except because the force we were up against since that dragon was a CR 30, I think. But the DM said sure because the challenge level for the strongest monsters in D&D, that being the Tarrasque, Tiamat, and Bahamut, the avatars of Tiamat and Bahamut, all combined could probably not fight the army. And I knew that even with all the defenses we put in place, with 50, like the object HP, I'm trying to think of it, well, I can't remember it at this point, but there was I had a 50 threshold, yes, a 50 HP threshold, which meant if any of them hit it for below 50 damage, they couldn't deal damage to the wall. Apparently, they could deal more than 50 damage. So I panicked, and we all panicked, and we were able to destroy about 1,000 giants before they crossed the tree line. Now, as all our cannons were ready, the wizards were preparing to cast Stone Shape on the wall because it was about to get destroyed. And the DM was basically probably laughing behind the video call because we would not survive this. And I realized that a bit too late. There was a second facet of it since it was all led by Lolth, the Drower surging it from the Underdark too. So we just sealed those entrances off and gave them to the Mind Flayers below us. Long story about that, really long story. But for a runner here, and I went very off script, so if I ramble, and this is probably going to go on for 50 years, just expect me to ramble, and since I think that's one of the better versions of the voiceover, which I've only done 2, so, I'll probably just keep this in, since I'm going to do it in one block. But at the finale, we allow allies with the Lord's Alliance, and my Siwa would be the first line of defense, and the last. Not for the reasons you might think, because there was a TPK, but because, shockingly, we had won because of a plan I made. Specifically, a runner here won because of a plan I made. I'll let you have 2 guesses. I did mention this earlier, so a bit of a guess. What 2 things earlier in the video did I say were the 2 things that you shouldn't do as a DM, as a DM to allow or do specifically? Just respond in the comments or something. I don't really know, and I'll try and respond as appropriately. I'll give you this time to pause and think about it, or if you're a DM, you'll know this. Because it's kind of obvious if you have played some of these games that they're not really the best systems. Alright, and now that 20 seconds have passed, I'm not really counting. If it was 20 seconds, that would be pretty insane. The 2 things are high levels and XP-based game. Now, skip this if you do not want to hear some D&D lingo. I recommend skipping 20, 30, 40 seconds ahead. I don't really know how much. Like I said, this is going to be my first video on, I believe, any social media platform, so that I'm directly aware of. So I'm pretty sure that I am not doing this right, but beginner's luck maybe. So now here's the D&D lingo, because I realized I kind of, you should skip now, I think. Alright, here goes. I'll try and keep this quick. So, Bards, I used the Bard's Mystic Secrets, because it lets you get extra spells from other spell lists. I got the Wizard spell Wish, the spell Mirage Arcane. Wait, I don't think it it lets you get Wish. I got Wish, Mirage Arcane, and I haven't gotten that yet. But I scared off some giants using Illusory Dragon, since it was an XP-based game, and there was a huge number of giants that I scared away, which was not going to help very much, but I think I scared away 2,000 out of the 80,000, so 140 of them fled, because it was a roll in the 40s, which was crazy. But I ended up with a level 65 character where everyone else was level 18. Apparently. So I became a Bard Cleric Fighter Rogue. Bard Cleric Rogue Fighter. And I used Wish-based Mirage Arcane because you can use Wish to cast spells as an action. So a Wish replicated Mirage Arcane combined with Divine Intervention to make it actually sort of real. Like, real as in when it exists, it's real, but when the spell ends, it goes away. And then for Fighter, I took Action Surge, so I was able to use both abilities at once. Now, I am very much out of breath from that explanation. But basically, for those who skipped, and at this point you can stop skipping, maybe I'll include it as like a time stop, I guess? Like a timestamp, I'm not really sure how you do that. This is my first experience with making a YouTube video. Anyways, so what ended up happening is I caused spikes to burst up from the ground, flames to fall from the sky, knives to fall from the sky, and pyroclastic flow to coat the ground because I was really into National Geographic back then. Because it's cool. And you really should take a look at it because the almanacs are pretty fun. Especially when you don't really know a lot of rare facts and stuff. Because they have some pretty interesting facts that I have used in, like, trivia. So, speaking of, so just, like, a bunch of stuff happened. Spikes impaled people, knives fell from the sky, fire and lava burned and suffocated everyone. Well, all the giants, I kept my city out of the carnage, because I turned my city surrounded by an adamantium orb. And what happened, orb made out of, like, either adamantium or the same stuff in the barrier of the spell. Because what happened was, Mirage Arcane, since it's not a combat spell, it goes out to a half-mile radius, or a mile diameter. Because of that, so many giants got killed, that I became, I believe, a level 98 character, or like a 198 character, or a 298 character, I'm not really sure. It was like somewhere in like either 278, 298, 198, or somewhere around there, I guess. But what ended up, I think it was either 265, 298, or 279. Sorry for all of this stuff. Or 289, but I might have said that already. I'm so sorry for the constant repetition of maybe ors. Ah, dang it. So sorry. I ended up spilling some stuff. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to clean that up after the video. So I'll keep the rest of it quick. I spilled my water. On my brother's character sheet, so he is gonna hate me. Yikes. Yeah, that's not good. Anyways, so with all that stuff, I ended up becoming powerful enough to literally just say to the D&D party, I'll be back in a few seconds, teleported to the abyss where Lolth is, and just completely two-shot Lolth. Like, I am not kidding you. It was some of the craziest, most insane BS that I have ever pulled off in D&D to this day. But yeah, I think I like 3-shot or 2-shot Lolth in combat. Melee combat. Because even though as a spellcaster I became, I believe, a level 20 in literally every class, including Artificer, since I like collecting books. But now they're D&D books, so it's cool, and not a very dumb hobby, like actually collecting books like a normal person. Like normal books. So going back to what I said, so I defeat Lolth, and then I transformed into actual Tiamat, which I mentioned earlier, who was the So I turned into Tiamat, who I mentioned earlier, who was the evil dragon god and could not be touched by any of the giant's attacks, because a little thing about giant's attacks, they are elemental as well. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, the giants ended up losing, and my character got to level 2098. I'm so sorry that I really haven't been paying attention to this part of the video. I spilled water on, I believe, all my players' character sheets. And I am very scared that since they're coming over to play tomorrow, they're not really going to dry out at all. I'm not really sure how good the drying out would even be. So I'm very scared. Wish me luck, alright? But for D&D, going back to our story, so I came back to the mortal world as Tiamat. Like, they did not know, because I true polymorphed into Tiamat, actual Tiamat, and they were like, so the players were shocked because Tiamat wasn't even in this combat, and they weren't in the original video call where I won, so I turned back into Oronic here and claimed that I was going to take a nap. They all proceed to leave the voicemail or laugh hysterically. The DM and I laughed hysterically. The others just left out of like, come on. I mean, they weren't. And I also wanted the DM to continue having fun with the other players. Wonder why that didn't happen. Because I wanted them to play out the whole giant versus scenario because the Giants and Drow came after me instead. So, yeah, that didn't happen. Again, I'm so sorry I droned off at the end of the video. I really don't think that my players are going to be happy that I kind of soaked their character sheets. It's just water, though, so it should clear off fine. But the writing might be smudged, which sucks. So I might just, remake their character sheets. Further DMs, and finally, the story of Veronica is over, and I can give my throat and lungs a break. Thank you all for watching. I cut out the original ending since it went on for too long, but I plan on posting more and higher quality D&D content relatively shortly. I hope that you all enjoyed the video, and feel free to comment your own D&D stories down below.